Well guys, it's an absolute scorcher today. A little bit too warm for working, but needs must. Got to crack on. Over here on the bench, we've got a Mercedes Cosworth engine. We'll explain what we're doing to that a little bit later. You can see the line of cylinder heads, etc. on the floor, which is a little bit like the olden days where they're just lined up, all ready to go. But over here, my next job, you see here we've got a load of Cosworth, Sierra Cosworth pistons. Now what I'm doing with these is putting the valve pockets in and taking some off the top. So we've got a set at the back here. These are for James Wills at Auto Dynamics. So these pistons are for this engine, which we've done all the machining on. Now James is going to pick this up. Once I put the valve pockets in, he's going to do a dummy build, see how much the pistons need to be machined on the surface, obviously to get the correct jut out. And then they are going to be machined, but that is all ready to go. So as you can see, I've done the inlet cutouts on these pistons, and these are for another customer, which obviously they're second hand, but he's re-ringing them. The pistons are perfect. So we put the inlet pockets in, and we're just going to go over and put the exhaust pockets in. And these ones, he wants 10 thou off. He's done a dummy build with these, so he wants 10 thou off the tops of the pistons once we've done the cutouts. So let's head over to the milling machine, and I'll show you once again how to put the inlet pockets in. So I know I've showed you this before, guys, but for you people that have just joined us or you're new to the channel, I'll just quickly show you again. So what we've got here is a dummy piston with, obviously you can see the cutouts are in this. So what we do, we've got basically a vise here in an angle jig with a plate on that we've made, and this is a perfect fit into where the gudgeon pin goes, so we can set these pistons up. Now this is a dummy one, which we obviously set the cutter onto. So what we do is, first of all, we set it up in there, so we know every time we put a piston on there and push it over to the side that they're all going to be the same every time we put one on. So on the inlets, once we've set those up, once we've done one pocket, we then have to move it over 38.5 on there, and with the exhaust going from 0, we move it over 34, and that is the centers there. I've got it all written down because I've done these many a times. So let's get our piston set up in the jig, and I'll show you how we do it. So you can see the pin is through the piston, and that now slides. Don't have to take the rings off, these rings are coming off anyway. So what we do is we push it right over there, and we've got a nut which we've machined to the correct depth so it actually fits underneath that groove in this piston. So we wind that one on without tightening it, just do it finger tight. Then we move this piston right over until it goes up against that stud. Then we put the other nut on. Okay. Then we just nip it evenly either side until it's not overly tight. Don't need to go wild. There we go, it's nipped up. Now you can see, because we've already done one, we started at 0, moved it to 34. Now what we're going to do is do the other way around. So you see it's at 34. We're doing these pockets 5mm deep. So we wind it up, turn it on, and then down here, if we start at 0, we wind it up. You see, when we come to just started to touch on the piston there, and that is at 0. So we know that 2 turns of this is 5mm, 1 turn is 2.5mm. So the reason I do the pockets at this depth, see that's 2.5mm. The reason I do the pockets at this depth is so it's a bit overkill really, just coming up to 0, and then we wind it off. Yeah, so the reason I do the pockets at this depth is so we can run any cams you want to. So basically you haven't got to take the bottom end to bits if you ever wanted to change to some big old Larry cams, okay? It's slightly overkill, but that's the way I do it. Right, so now we're up there. We wrap it over and go back to 0 on here. Okay, that'll do. And then we wind up to 0 there. See, that's just starting to touch. And we go around 2 revolutions, which is 5 mil. And there we go. Back it off. Then we can rapid our machine down. So the piston is out the way. Turn it off. Stop the cutter. And there we go, guys. All we've got to do now is put this in the lathe, take 10th thou off the crown, and that is ready for the customer to go back. Right then, guys, an update on the Golf engine. Now, you haven't had an update for a few weeks. Some of you are probably wondering what's going on with it. So basically, it's still sitting out there on a pallet in bits. Now, just a quick recap for people that have just joined us and haven't been involved with the saga with the Golf engine. We had a customer get back in touch with us after 2.5 years, something like that. We just went through it, put in new crank bearings, re-ringed it, etc, etc. From about 2 months after he had the engine, he did come back saying that he had low oil pressure when cold. So fair enough, we had the car back in, had a look. We did send him away and said, look, we can't see anything wrong with it, but if you put in original gauges, senders, genuine oil filter, all the rest of it, see how you get on. We didn't hear anything back from him. So he gets back in touch with us, I think it was like a couple of years later, and said, look, still having this issue, haven't done many miles at all. We obviously got back and said, well, obviously it's well out of warranty or any sort of warranty, but because you haven't done many miles, he ended up coming in and going away, and we was chatting about it via email, in person. And it all sort of seemed to get a bit heated, but we were sort of saying, well, we can't say any fairer than we'll get the engine back. You bring it back in the state that you picked it up, so a bare tall engine. We'll persist in stripping it, inspect it. If we can't see anything wrong with the engine as far as that would cause that oil pressure issue, then it's up to you then to get an independent engineer to come in, inspect the engine. So in fact, we've been obviously going through emails since then, and we did state on our first email, part of the conditions of this, if he disputes it or we can't find anything wrong with it, or both, then it's up to him to get an independent engineer in here under his costs and inspect the engine. If it deems that there is something wrong with the engine that may have been a cause that what we did, we will obviously cover all costs, build the engine back up. If agreed by both parties, we will build it back up, and away he goes. If it turns out that there is nothing wrong with the engine, or there's nothing wrong that we could have done, then all costs will be chargeable to the customer. So that's labour, machining and parts. So that's where we were at. We did get the engine back, we stripped it, couldn't see anything wrong with it. We then invited him in to have a look for himself, we ran him through it, etc. So obviously then the next step would be to get an independent engineer in. He didn't seem to want to do that. He turns up then with the vehicle with another engine in it, so a second-hand engine that he bought, all running okay. He said that this one's all okay, but that didn't really prove a point because we've still got all the old senders, etc. on this old engine. So the second-hand engine come with all new bits. But anyway, we said that's by the by, really. All we're interested in is the engine we've got, the engine we did, and if there's any issue there that could be causing oil pressure. So he needs to go and get an independent engineer. There was a bit of a sort of a stalemate with that. He didn't seem to want to do it. So what I then did was, obviously, if we're at a stalemate, as far as we're concerned, we are, we've done our bit. We can't see anything wrong with it. And that is the final conclusion at this point. So what we've done is build in for all the labour, which obviously includes the stripping of the engine. It's obviously part of the labour. It's not a freebie. And obviously the storage of the engine, because as far as we're concerned, if we're at no point, if we're at a stalemate and he doesn't want to pick the engine up or doesn't want to pay for it, then there's going to be storage charges. So we've hit a storage charge on it as well. So he's responded to the emails to and fro-in, stating that he wasn't aware that he was going to be charged any storage, which is fair enough. But the only reason we put a storage fee on anything is if it's been left here unnecessarily, really, anything. So even if it's an engine that we've done, we can't get hold of the customer, they're not picking it up, then we're going to hit them with, it's an encouragement for them to pick them up, really. Obviously with this engine, there doesn't appear to be any sign of it being paid for, or, you know, we're at a crossroads, so what do? We can't just store pallets worth of stuff for everyone. So that's why we've done that. He's obviously confused about that storage charge, and also the stripping of the engine, which was like 3 or 4 hours work, whatever it was. There's sort of no real sign of him sticking to his part of the deal, really. He's what he needs to do next is get an independent engineer in here. So I've had 2 response emails since then. One of which I've got to reply to in the next couple of days, because he said he'd quite like it in 7 days, been 5 days. So what he's suggesting now is alternate dispute resolution, an ADR or whatever they call it. But in my eyes, as I say, what I shall say in my response in the next couple of days is if he sticks to his part and gets the independent engineer in, that's where we are with it. As far as we're concerned, that's what we're waiting for. He disputes our decision. He needs to get in an independent engineer. And obviously, if it all turns out in his favour, once he's done his part of the deal, then obviously we're not going to start charging the storage charge. But as it stands, what do? We're at a stalemate. We don't know what his plans are. He's not mentioned anything. He hasn't mentioned sort of what he wants, apart from not being charged anything. So that's the way it stands with us. I'm not changing that. I don't feel the need for any alternative dispute resolution. He just needs to stick to his part of the deal. So that's what I should be putting in my response. I also did state on my email before his 2 responses that we're obviously, if that's where it is at the moment and it's not going to be collected, we can't get rid of it. We can't have it sitting there. As much as the storage charge has been built up, we're going to have to go to court and try and get our money back. So again, it's an encouragement for it to be hurried up, really. We don't want it to get to that point, but we're a business at the end of the day. This isn't anything personal. This is just we've got to get this thing sorted. So that's where we are, guys. He's, as I say, there's no real sign. The next step for us is he needs to get the independent engineer in here, and we will sort of go from there. But all this to and fro with emails on complete clarification on misunderstandings. There's no misunderstanding. What our terms said in the first email before he brought the engine in is, if an independent engineer, or if the conclusion goes in our favour, all labour, that's all labour, will be paid for. So it's the same as if someone brings an engine in here to be sort of stripped and inspected, then doesn't go ahead with the rebuild. All labour is to be paid for, and that includes the stripping and inspecting. However you word it, or whatever you think you misunderstood, that's it. That was what was in the email. So yeah, that's where we are with it at the minute, guys. Bit of a stalemate. Let me know what you think down in the comments. The Land Rover. I said to you in the last video, this Land Rover we did last year for Devon 4x4, a local company, big 4x4 specialist. They had put it in the vehicle because they were restoring the vehicle, you see. It's a Series 1. They did put it in the vehicle, but it wasn't running or anything and wasn't connected up. So fortunately, what they've done is they've took it out, brought it back to us. And this is actually a warranty job. Now, it's nothing to do with us. It obviously hasn't run yet. But we got a phone call about 2 months ago from Craddock's. So that's Craddock's Land Rover. Is it Craddock's Land Rover? Don't know. But anyway, we bought a few bits from Craddock's. Now, Craddock's always deal with decent brands. And they supplied us, one of the things they supplied us was the cam bearings, which we changed. They were a good brand, good manufacturer. But apparently they've been in touch with us and they've said there is a problem with the cam bearings. Now, what the problem is, I think, is whether it's a sort of laminate for the material, I don't know, it's something to do with the material, but they've sort of been delaminating. There's not many cases, but they have delaminated, and obviously that can destruct the engine. So there's a recall on this. Craddock's are going to have this engine back, apparently, and they're going to do the job. So we've done the motor, so we're piggy in the middle with it. But yeah, Craddock's are going to sort that out. They're getting a new batch of bearings at the end of June, so hopefully in a couple of weeks we can get this sorted, get it back to Denver before, and they can get it in the vehicle and get that back to their customer. But yeah, not ideal, but it's no one's fault really, but I suppose the manufacturer, but they are sorting it out, so ideal. Okay, so if you remember a few videos back when we went over to Tom Upton's place, that Tom is the lad that does the welding for us, and he did a Cosworth cylinder head. So this is the said cylinder head that he's done. We give it one lick over, and as you can see, there's a couple of areas plus a few little sort of blowholes there that haven't cleaned. So what I did was just clean off the weld basically, but you can see over the back where it's been blowing the gasket and hasn't cleaned anyway. So what I've done is give it a little lick over. I want to cut the seats. They all vacuum perfect now. Obviously we'll clean the valves, and now we're just giving it a finish cut over. Now this cylinder head has had quite a bit took off in the past, so what the customer is going to do and what he was aware of before he even decided to fix this head is you're going to have to run a thicker head gasket. So he's going to have to get a Cometic gasket. They go up to about 2.5 mil, they do, so that's the only option with this head. But being an Escort Cosworth head, you can imagine it's quite rare, quite sought after, and very expensive if you can get older ones. So this is what we're doing, obviously, to fix this head. The next step for this would be to completely weld up the face and start again basically, but obviously the cost is quite dramatic if you're going to start doing that. While we're on the subject of Cosworths, if any of you guys watch any other Cosworth YouTube channels, you'd have probably heard of Adam Smith and watched his channel. Now Adam has got a Sapphire Cosworth and a 3-door Cosworth. The Sapphire Cosworth he's just bought is a 2-wheel drive, and if you go onto his channel and watch the sort of series on this Sapphire, you see that he's deciding to build his own engine, tune it up a bit, and this is the 200 block out of that car. So the reason Adam sent this to us is we've got to give the block a face over, and we've got to put 6 long studs in it. You can see it's got a little bit of bore wear, but he's got new pistons coming, so we've got to bore it. But yeah, so we've just got to do our normal 6 long stud conversion on this for Adam, and then get this back to him. But yeah, Adam was one of the guys that I started watching before any other car channel actually. I found him really fascinating, quite like his connection with people really. He's just a normal guy, normal working guy who just tinkering with his car, mainly in his garage. So yeah, really like Adam's channel. But if you haven't seen it before guys, get over there and check it out. So here we've got another Cosworth head guys. Now this is for Paul and Pete. They'll certainly be watching our video, they always do. That engine over there is Paul's, but this I believe is Pete's head. It's in for porting, obviously, which we've done there, and this is a stage 1 normally aspirated ported head really. So obviously we've got to face the top, which we're going to do in a minute. So these ports are 26.5 and 24.5. You can go up to about 28 on these ports for normally aspirated, but we're not going to bother. We're going to keep this as a hydraulic setup, put a set of the original genuine hydraulics in it. And yeah, this would be a nice interesting build. So I suspect we may be getting involved with the rest of the engine, maybe supply some pistons or something like that. But yeah, very nice job. Got the bronze valve seat inserts. So yeah, let's get this one up guys, give it a lick over, and that one's ready for Paul to collect. Well, thank you very much for watching this video guys. Until Monday, where I hope to God it just cools down that little bit much. I don't want to wish on the winter at all, but yeah, bit warm in here today. Until then, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you on Mondays. Cheers guys.